Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Just taking a moment here to set up the audio, make sure it's working well. Testing audio, 1, 2, 3. Testing audio, making sure I'm not too loud or too low. Okay, let's begin. Today we're going to be discussing listing contracts. So we're going to go over some of the important listing contracts. And we're also going to be discussing right of sale. So to begin with, we're going to start discussing about the exclusive right of sale and that specific term and why I recommend you use that whenever you're taking a listing. So, exclusive right of sale. Now they have they have other different type of listing agreements that you could use as far as when you're taking a listing for representing a seller in a transaction, whether it be commercial or residential or any other type of aspect of real estate. So what I recommend is that you do always exclusive right of sale, because if you do an exclusive brokerage listing agreement or anything other, there's language in there like, here, I can show you. So let's look up for an exclusive brokerage listing agreement. Let's see here. Exclusive brokerage listing agreement. Let's take a look at this contract real quick. So I've had a lot of realtors, they send me the exclusive brokerage listing agreement, and what they don't realize a lot of the time is that if you read this first paragraph here, the authority to sell property, let's read through it together real quick. Seller gives broker the right to be the exclusive broker in the sale of the real and personal property, collectively property, described below, at the price and terms described below, beginning this date and terminating at 11:59 p.m. on this specific date. So it's pretty standard, the first paragraph there. But then the next paragraph is something important. Seller reserves the right to sell the property directly to a buyer without the assistance of any real estate licensee, and, if successful, does not owe broker a commission. This is important right here. This is what a lot of realtors fail to realize when they're doing this specific listing agreement. What this paragraph means right here is that the seller can find a buyer on their own. Let's say maybe a family member or one of the neighbors, or really anyone contacted the seller directly, and if the seller wants, they could work without the assistance of you, the realtor, and your brokerage, and they could do the sale themselves. and they don't have to pay you a single penny in commission. You've basically done whatever you've done for them. They don't have to pay you anything. And this is why I don't recommend you use this type of listing agreement or anything other than an exclusive right of sale, keyword right of sale. Because just because you're an exclusive brokerage with this listing agreement, you could, you're basically, you could waste your time negotiating with the seller, going to view the property, and try to earn their trust and their business. You end up signing this listing contract, and then you spend money in marketing the property. Maybe you pay for photos, you're going out to the listing, you're doing showings, that costs time and money. Money is time. You're going out there showing the property, spending, I'm sure, your gas money, the wear and tear on your vehicle. And then of course, what is your time worth to you for being compensated for doing all that? So you could do all of this, take photos of the property, set it up in the MLS, advertise it in the MLS, do all of these different things, and then show the property to countless amounts of buyers. Maybe do this for 3, 4, 6 months, and then the seller can sell the property to a buyer without your assistance and don't have to pay you anything. So you did all that work, spent all of that money, and now you're not going to get a single penny out of that. And maybe it's just my personal opinion, but to me that's not something I'm interested in. To me, that's an unacceptable way to do business, but if that's acceptable to another realtor, I'm not one to judge. So really, the whole purpose of this is, when I'm talking about it, is you want to do an exclusive right of sale. So let's go look at the exclusive right of sale contract. Let's go to the blank forms. Let's look for the exclusive right of sale. Let's look at right here, exclusive right of sale listing agreement, transaction broker. And that's another thing we'll talk about, the transaction broker, I also always recommend. So this is why it's important to do the right of sale listing agreement. Seller gives broker the exclusive right to sell the real and personal property, the same thing in the terms, this date to this date, upon full execution of a contract for sale and purchase of the property. All rights and obligations of this agreement will automatically extend through the date of the actual closing of the sales contract. Seller and broker acknowledge that this agreement does not guarantee a sale. This property will be offered to any person without regard, so on and so forth. Seller certifies that he or she is legally entitled to convey the property. So the exclusive right of sale, or exclusive right to sell, is basically meaning, it doesn't really discuss it in this paragraph, but it is, let's see if we can find the term. It should be in here somewhere. Either way, the exclusive right of sale means that it doesn't matter who sells the property. It means that the seller can have a family member that wants to purchase the property later on, or sell it to a neighbor. They don't have to, do things without you and so forth. Regardless of that, once you have this listing agreement signed, you're due your commission whenever that property is sold by the seller. So it doesn't matter if they decided to sell the property on their own or whatever the case may be, you have the exclusive right of sale. And that's how I recommend you do any type of listing, whether it's commercial or residential, because you don't want to, if you're going to invest your time into negotiating with the seller, probably going out to the property, taking a look at it, discussing all different types of terms, earning their trust and building a rapport, getting them to finally sign a listing contract, listing the property in the MLS, taking pictures, photos, and so forth, whether you do it yourself or have another company do it, uploading the photos in the MLS, doing showings or scheduling showings, taking phone calls. All these things cost time, and time is money. And some of these things, photos and so forth, can cost money. Basically, what the exclusive right of sale means is that you're due your commission under any and all circumstances. It doesn't matter who sells the property. So that's how I recommend you take a listing. This isn't required for you to do it this way. This is just my professional opinion, is that if you're going to be taking a listing, you're due your commission under the terms of this contract regardless. Because me personally, I'm not interested in investing my time and money and taking the listing and putting it in the MLS if I'm not going to be guaranteed a commission. We all work for a living, and we need to make money and so forth. We're already working on a commission, and we're putting up our own time and money probably just to advertise the property. There's no guarantee it's going to sell. So in my professional opinion, when it sells, no matter the circumstances, you should be due your commission. A lot of work can go into a sale and trying to get a sale done, especially depending on the list price and so forth. So that's why I always recommend you do the exclusive right of sale whenever you're doing a listing, not anything else, because you should be due your commission under any and all circumstances if you're going to be signing a listing contract. Now, if you're not doing a good job or something and the seller's unhappy, you can always release them from the listing contract if a problem arises or if they just don't want to sell no more. That leads into a whole other thing. You could cancel the contract, take the property off the market. There's ways to still make the terms of this contract stay in effect so that even if you take the property off the market, until the date or so many days after the date, you could still be due your commission if the seller decides to sell the property, just in case they just want to get out of the contract and work with someone else. But you should still be due your commission if they sign this contract. But that's a whole other type of scenario. We could talk about that later or in another stream. But basically the important thing to remember here, while I'm taking the time to go over this and emphasize it, is that the exclusive right of sale is very important when you're taking a listing, because you should be due your commission under any and all circumstances if you're going to actually sign a listing contract and invest the time in advertising the property. So we'll go through this specific listing agreement in just a second here. Give me one moment and we'll start working on this. All right, sorry about that. Let's start going through this particular contract. This is the exclusive right of sale listing agreement transaction broker. And there's a paragraph down here that discloses that. We'll just go look at that real quickly. Where is it? Brokerage relationship, paragraph 10. So broker will act as a transaction broker. Concerning the state of Florida, I always highly recommend that you always operate as a transaction broker. Single agency, I suppose there's times and places for it. It just puts on a lot of liability on you. It also makes it so that you can't work with the buyer and represent both sides. I just really don't recommend it. As single agency, even everyone in your brokerage can't work with the buyers. It makes things very complicated. If you're with our brokerage, I always tell everyone, if you're going to take a single agency relationship, to contact me first to discuss why you feel the need to do a single agency, because it puts a lot of liability and makes things very difficult. Really, I always recommend just always operate as a transaction broker. If you're going to take a listing, especially a residential listing, which is what this contract is used for, you want to do the exclusive right of sale listing agreement transaction broker. You want to make sure it's a transaction broker, because it's just in the state of Florida, it's the best way to operate as a transaction broker, in my opinion, but you may feel otherwise. That's just my opinion. So this is the contract I recommend. You're taking a residential listing, exclusive right of sale listing agreement, transaction broker. Let's start filling this out and get right into it. Let's just put some placeholders for the seller. Let's just say Billy Bob's the seller, John Doe's the buyer, just to put some placeholders there. The next part here, something pretty important that I've discussed in my tutorial videos, and I'll always discuss again. The proper way to put the dates here is, if you're going to do in the state of Florida, you shouldn't be doing anything over a 1-year term. If you're going to go past 1 year, you can't do that. It's going to be shorter than a year. 6 months, 8 months is fine, but every time you exceed a year, you need to do a new contract after a year. So let's say this contract is going to begin on the 1st of July. So that means that when this contract expires, it's not supposed to expire on the 1st of July 2023. I see a lot of realtors make that mistake. It's always supposed to be a day behind. So if this contract began on the 1st of July 2022 and you're doing a year contract, it's supposed to expire on the 30th of June, 1 day behind, because it ends at 11:59 p.m. on the 30th. It's not supposed to be the same day. That's the proper way to do it. I see a lot of times realtors just put July 1st, 2023. That's not correct. That's not the way you're supposed to do it. Technically, it's exceeding a year. So the right way to do it is to go one day backwards. If it was July 5th, this would be July 4th. If it was July 10th, this would be July 9th, and so on and so forth. Pretty self-explanatory. I know I'm probably talking about it a little bit more than necessary, but it is important and it is the right way to do it. So just some notes on that. The next part here is the street address. This is another here that may sound a little redundant, but it's kind of important. I see the mistake made quite a bit, so it's good to pay attention. Even though you might be busy, you might be rushing through things, put the full street address. You want to put the city, the state, and the zip code. And I've even seen realtors leave out the numbers. They'll just put the name of the street without the numbers, like in this case 123 Happy Street, let's say Miami, Florida, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They'll leave out the beginning numbers, they'll leave out the zip code. I've seen realtors leave out the city. You got to put the full address. I know it sounds kind of silly, but I've seen it done too many times where part of the address is missing, and it's not acceptable. Just take a moment to make sure you have the full address written in there with the full 6-digit zip code at least. The next part here is legal description. Most of the time you could go through the public records and you can copy and paste the legal description from the public records into this paragraph box here. A lot of times the legal description can be very big and it doesn't fit. In that case, you could just write, you click the C attachment and you could write C Exhibit A, and you could attach an Exhibit A to this particular contract, and you could list the whole legal description there, and you could write that here too. See Exhibit A. If the legal description is very big, and some properties some properties the legal description is very massive. You're not going to fit it in these two little lines right here. It's going to take about maybe a whole page sometimes. It just depends on the property. So you could create a separate Exhibit A and make it in a Word document or something and attach it to the contract here. So that's one way to do it there. Personal property, including appliances. This is where you could list things like the refrigerator, the freezer, the dishwasher, the washer, dryer, things like that. You start listing the appliances. If there's property being sold with the listing, such as like maybe the seller is offering like the TVs that are mounted onto the wall, or maybe there's a couple couches that are being offered with the listing, you could write that in here and try to fit it in these paragraphs. If you can't fit everything, maybe there's a big inventory list, maybe the property is being sold fully furnished, and there's multiple couches, chairs, dining room tables, TVs, dressers, things like that. Then what you could do is, once again, you could click the C attachment button and you could write in here C Exhibit B, and you could create a separate Word document once again that says Exhibit B, inventory list, something like that, and then you could list everything there if it's that particular case where you're selling like a lot of furniture like TVs and such, dressers, couches, chairs, tables. You could list it there. So that's one thing to do if you're selling a furnished property, but most of the time if you're just selling just empty vacant home with just the normal appliances, you can normally fit all the appliances in these two paragraph spots here, such as a refrigerator, dishwasher, microwave, washer, dryer, freezer, ice maker, whatever the case may be. Occupancy. This is where you check mark if the property is occupied or is not occupied by a tenant. If it is, you'll click is, and then you'll write when the lease expires. For this particular example and video, we're going to say the property is vacant, so is not currently occupied by a tenant. Okay. The price and terms. Let's say this is where you write the list price. Let's say this particular property is going to be $300,000. My recommendation is to just always click all these boxes, just consider everything. Really, it's sometimes you could run into problems. This is just my professional advice in the state of Florida, that you don't want to like discriminate upon like the type of financing someone's going to get. So you don't want to like, you don't really want to have someone call and say, hey, I have a VA loan, do you accept this? And you say, oh no, we're not accepting any VA loans. I mean, you can do that. I've heard in certain counties that causes an issue. My recommendation is to just accept everything with all offers, and try to convince your seller to not even run into that liability or problem, because you don't want to get into a situation where like, I know there's certain counties where like, I know it's for rentals, but if you say you don't accept Section 8 vouchers, you could get into trouble for that, discriminating upon Section 8 vouchers. I haven't heard of it, and I'm not too sure, so don't quote me on it as far as discriminating against like FHA or VA loans. My recommendation is just to consider all of these options and just present it to the sellers and advise the sellers to just, take a look at it. If they really don't want a VA or FHA loan, they don't, you can't force the seller to accept it, but to just, hold on to the contract and just consider it. You don't have to accept it. And you could wait, the sellers can say, we're waiting to see if there's any cash or conventional offers coming in, and that you can't force the seller to accept the VA or FHA. But the purpose of this conversation is, I always recommend that you at least consider all of the options, so that you don't have any window for opening up any problems or anything. These next two boxes for the seller to hold a purchase money mortgage or an assumption of an existing mortgage. I'm not really going to get into this. I rarely see this done. If you're going to be filling this out or need help with filling it out, I'd recommend you contact your broker. If you're with our brokerage, you could give me a call directly. I've almost never see this really filled out here with residential, but it can be filled out. It does exist. That's why it's here. But for the purposes of this example and video that we're doing, we're not going to get too into it and so forth. But if you are doing something like this, contact your broker for further information if you need help filling this section out here. For now, we're going to move along. The next paragraphs, you could read through these at your discretion. There's nothing really to fill in here. Just discusses a couple things until we get to paragraph 6 here. So to make this simple, as far as paragraph 6 down here, all the way to part G, I recommend mainly just never filling this part out. You don't have to have the seller initial here or anything like that. The only thing I'd recommend filling out is paragraph E here. If you're going to use a lockbox system, whether it be a combo lockbox or a Supra, you check this box. And the next things you could check, this is at your discretion, whether you want to withhold verbal offers. I usually check this box, but you don't have to. And then you could withhold all offers once seller accepts a sales contract for a property. I usually check these boxes. If I'm doing the showings personally and there's no lockbox being used, then I don't click this box. But usually I always check all 3 of these boxes, unless the seller is like really doesn't want one of these things checked, in which case it can be negotiable. It's not too big of a deal. But I always check them just in case I need to use a lockbox system at some point. It's already check marked there. Even if I'm doing the showings personally and just holding the keys and just going to do the showings, or if the seller lives at the property. If the seller lives at the property and they're going to be present for the showings all the time, you don't really need this check marked, but I usually always like to have it there just in case there's ever a situation where I need to use a lockbox. So I usually check mark these 3. As far as up here, if you're check marking display the property on the internet without the street address, this is between you and your broker. I never recommend doing this because what's the point in hiding the street address? I feel it needs to be advertised to the this I feel hurts the property more than helps it in any way. So I don't really recommend clicking this, but it exists there, so that's at your sole discretion. And then if just the box here does not authorize the broker to display the property on the MLS, your MLS is your strongest tool. I can't see why anyone would want to sign a listing contract if they want to not put it on the MLS. So to keep it simple, I skip part A and B, usually always, but talk to your broker if you're going to be doing otherwise. I never fill part A and B out. I always just leave it blank. It's it hurts the listing more than it helps it, in my opinion. And part E, I usually always click these just to fill them out, but you could leave some of them empty depending on what you're doing. That's at your discretion. Part G, I usually never click these unless the seller is persistent and just doesn't want this. I've never had any issue or think it causes any harm to have the automated estimate of a market value of a listing, the hyperlink, or to have third parties write comments. I've never even seen comments or reviews written on a property or listing or anything like that, so I usually don't even bother about this in the MLS. I just let it be. But the seller doesn't like this and doesn't want it, then you could click these and just make sure it matches in the MLS, because that could cause a liability issue. If you click these, the seller signs his contract, and then when you advertise the property in the MLS, you have these turned on, and then there's maybe comments or estimated market values about the listing, that could be a liability issue. So make sure your contract reflects what you're doing in the MLS. For the purpose of this video, I'm just going to leave these blank. I usually always do, unless someone sees it and reads it and complains about it, then I'll check mark them. It's really not a big deal. I've never seen the property get the advertising of the property or anything, cause any harm or any issues, whether this is checked or this isn't checked. So it's up to you and your client whether you want this checked or not. Me, just leave it alone, keep it simple, move along. We have the seller obligations. This is another paragraph. If there's anything that materially affects the property that needs to be disclosed, you could put that here. Like, let's say, most of the time if there's nothing known, I always don't leave this blank. I always write none known. You can leave it blank. A lot of the realtors I work with, they do leave it blank. It's not really too big of a deal if you don't know anything, the seller doesn't know anything. I always like to put something there and write none known if there's nothing known. But if there is something known, maybe there's the roof leaks or something like that. The roof has a minor leak near the garage. You could write that here. Something like that. And then all the buyers that come see the property, you need to disclose that to the buyers, and you probably want to put that in the listing too, that there is a minor leak somewhere or something like that in the roof. So it could be something like that. It could be something like anything the seller discloses. There's like a limitless amount of things that could be a problem. Maybe there's an issue with the screen house. The screen house is a little damaged and falling apart a little bit in the backyard. Maybe the front door doesn't close and seal all the way properly or something like that. Anything that materially affects the problem. If there's like some type of violations on the property, maybe the association assessments are past due for several months and the seller owes money to the association, something like that. So you'd put that there. For this particular example, let's just say there's nothing wrong with the property, so none known. But if there's a lot of things that are wrong with the property, you create a separate exhibit, see exhibit C or D or whatever, and write the whole list down and put that into the listing and disclose all that information. It is required for the seller and for the realtor. If you know something about the property, it needs to be disclosed. It's affecting the value of the property, especially if it's something like anything that materially affects the property's value, basically as it says here. So you'll do that. Moving along here, compensation. This is a pretty important paragraph. This is how you'll get paid, your commission. Most of the time it's part A that's being filled out here. You can fill out part C or B depending on what you're doing, but for example purposes of this stream, we're going to say we're filling out part A. You're getting a percentage of the total purchase price. So let's say we're working for 5% today. This is a 5% total commission contract. So you put 5% there. And then here you could put, like if your brokerage charges a transaction fee and the seller is going to pay for the transaction fee, you could put that here. So you could put, I don't know, $200 transaction fee, whatever the case may be, $400 transaction fee. Our brokerage for the annual plan is $399. So let's say the client's going to be paying that transaction fee. You could put that there. So they're paying 5% of the purchase price, which is your commission, and a brokerage transaction fee of $3.99. So you can put that there. So that's how you fill that part out. Part D here. So this is the protection period. You can read through this paragraph. I always like to put like at least 90 days. You could adjust that as you seem fit. I always like to put something there. You can read through this paragraph. It's basically the protection period, after the termination date. So you could read through this paragraph. If you have questions about it, you could ask me. I'll let you know. But I always put 90 days there. If you want to put something else, 60 days, 45 days, that's up to you. 100 days, you would put that there. Retained deposits. I always leave this blank, or I just fill it in 50%. If your client's going to argue with this and want to negotiate it, you can change it to whatever. I always recommend that you at least receive something, because usually there's it could get pretty if you're going after deposits or something like that's happening where a buyer defaults and so forth, and then you're gonna have to seize the escrow deposit or whatever the case may be. Sometimes quite a bit of work can go into that. So regardless of how much you end up settling for with your client here, I suggest you at least get something. You don't want to just work for 0% and just give the client everything. But if you're okay with that, then you could do that. I always recommend 50-50 is good, but you could do like 40-60, 30-70, whatever the case may be. But I recommend you get something here, because usually a lot of work can go into that, going after deposits and so forth. So I usually write 50 there, or just leave it blank. I don't like to leave things blank, so I usually write things in, but that's up to you. Paragraph 9 is this is basically to simplify it. You're splitting your commission. So you put the property on the MLS, and another realtor contacts you and says, hey, I have a buyer, we're interested in your listing, and they do a showing, and then that realtor ends up putting in an offer, and then let's say everything goes well and you close the sale. Obviously that realtor is looking for a portion of the commission, so we set up here, this is a 5% commission. So usually, you could split it up however you want, but usually you give half. Not always, it just depends. Let's say for this particular example, we're going to be giving half. So we'll say 2.5%. And you should check mark all these boxes here for all the different relationships, single agency, transaction broker, and no brokerage relationship. So I'd recommend, the way I do it is I offer 2.5% to everybody. To me, it doesn't matter what their relationship is. If a realtor brings a buyer that they're representing and they close and we have a closed sale, I don't care about their relationship type. I'll pay them whatever commission I'm willing to pay. And you could change this. It could be 2%. It could be 1%. This is completely up to you how much you're offering as far as cooperation with another realtor. I have seen other realtors for the no brokerage relationship. They don't put that. They usually put like something like just a little flat fee, $500. You can do that and change the different relationship types and how much you're offering. Talk to your broker about that. It's at your sole discretion as the listing realtor. Me personally, in my opinion, I just offer whatever I'm offering to everybody. So this is how I usually keep it. I never check this last box, because if I can't put the property in the MLS, the advertising this listing is going to be very difficult, and it's not something I'm trying to do. I'm trying to put it in the MLS and get the best offer and the best type of advertising. So the way you fill this out, you check mark these boxes, you put in the percentage amounts, and there you go. That's how you fill that out. You could change that to however you see fit, but you're basically splitting some of your commission with a cooperating realtor. The next paragraph, as we spoke about a little while ago, transaction broker. I highly recommend it. You operate as a transaction broker. Conditional termination. This is another important paragraph that I recommend you fill out. This is, let's say you took this listing and 3 months later, the seller doesn't want to sell anymore. Something happened, or they just don't want to sell anymore, and they want to cancel the contract. You can cancel the contract conditionally. You can conditionally terminate the contract. However, I usually put an amount here. The amount you put here can be anything. It could be $300. It could be $1,500. It could be $4,000. It just depends. Basically, the seller will pay you this amount of money to completely cancel the contract and just go your separate ways and so forth. And they're basically paying you this fee for the amount of time and maybe money that you invested into the property for advertising the property and so forth. I always recommend you put something here, even if it's like a few $100s or something, so that the time you invested into the property doesn't go to waste, and you should be compensated for the time and money that you invested into spending your time with the seller, the client, taking their listing, signing a listing contract, putting it in the MLS, maybe taking some phone calls, doing some showings. If they just want to cancel on you and not sell the property anymore, I don't recommend just holding the listing and trying to advertise the property. If they don't want to sell anymore and they want to take it off the market, I recommend they take it off, just take it off the market and cancel the contract. But there should be a fee for that, for your time spent. So I recommend putting something here, but that's at your discretion if you want to put something here or not. I suggest it. Dispute resolution, I would recommend you have all the sellers and yourself initial this paragraph. You could read through this paragraph. I highly recommend filling this out. I do not recommend just leaving this blank and not filling this out. I think it's pretty important to initial this paragraph, and yeah, you could read through this, but that's my professional advice. Have everyone initial this paragraph. And I believe that's pretty much it. You have additional terms here. If there's anything else you're going to put in here, I'm not going to write any additional terms for this particular stream. The only thing I could recommend is if you're doing anything in the additional terms, keep it simple. Don't write anything that's extremely large or complicated where you're writing paragraphs of all these different terms. Just keep it simple. Usually a couple sentences is good enough. You don't want to start getting things complicated and doing something that you're not really supposed to be doing. That could be a liability issue. So just keep it simple, simple and easy if the additional terms is going to be put into play here. And that's pretty much it. You just have all the sellers sign and date, of course. You could fill out this information below here if you want. I usually always at least fill out the email address. The other stuff is, if you want to. Then of course you sign as the authorized sales associate. Sign there. The brokerage firm name. So I guess we messed that up in the beginning of the video. Is the broker name up here. Funny enough, I thought we were doing a sales contract with the seller and buyer. The broker name is the name of the company. So if it's our company, it is Realty Inc. I just noticed that. That's kind of funny. So writing Hills Realty Inc. And then let's say John Doe is the sales associate. I always like to write parentheses John Doe as listing agent, or listing sales associate, or listing realtor, something like that. But that's how I recommend you write this as far as the broker information. What you're supposed to put here is the company name. So if you're our broker, it's Niz Realty Inc. You put Niz Realty Inc. there. And then I always recommend you could put in parentheses your name there as the listing agent. So that's what you would put there for that. The company name. Scroll down to the bottom again here. That fits in right there. It automatically places it. You can fill this out. Of course, you have to have everyone initial every single page. So there's initials there, initials here. Make sure everyone initials every page, and just sign it and date it. And I always recommend at least filling out this down here. I see a lot of realtors, they don't fill this out. When I show you and do these tutorials, I'm going to tell you the proper way to do it. So you should fill it out. Just put the date there. And however, I usually check mark email because usually most of the things are done by email. Lately, I always do things by email, DocuSign, e-signatures. So put a date there. I'd recommend don't leave it blank. It's the proper way to fill this out. But the e-sign also has the certificate of authenticity as well. But it's good to fill this out. And that is the exclusive right of sale listing agreement, transaction broker. Not too long, fairly simple. I really recommend you fill it out the way that I suggest here. If there's other things you want to put, everyone may fill it out a little bit differently, but this is how I feel the right way to fill this out and to make it simple and easy. So that's the exclusive right of sale listing agreement. Let's see what else that we could discuss here as far as going through a tutorial for other things. Let's see here. Give me a moment. We're going to just go over some listing contracts, exclusive right of sale. Basically did everything that I was going to discuss today in the stream. But we can keep the stream going a little bit longer and discuss a couple of more things. So let's see here. Maybe we'll go over another listing contract. Let's take a look here. Yes, we could go over the modification to listing agreement. So the modification to listing agreement. This is a pretty good document to go over real quickly before we close the stream. So this particular document, the modification to listing agreement, you basically, as it says here, you'd use this to make some modifications to your listing agreement, whether it be the termination date, the price and terms, compensation, to conditionally terminate, to unconditionally terminate, or something other. This is the document you would use, and this document is pretty useful. Actually, I've used it quite a few times. I highly recommend it when you have to make some changes or cancel contracts. So the owner, let's just say, once again, Billy Bob is the owner, seller, the broker, company name, once again, let's do it correctly this time, Ms. Realty, Inc. And you could put trying to do it with listing agent. So you could put something like that. Same thing as the listing contract that we just did. And then if you're doing, like I suggested, the exclusive right of sale listing agreement, but you could also be doing the exclusive right to lease listing agreement. So one or the other here. So let's just say we're doing the one we just did, the exclusive right of sale. And then the property address, make sure you put the full property address. Don't leave anything out once again. Put the full number, the street name, everything. The city, don't forget the city. Don't forget the zip. I've seen some realtors, they leave out some of these different things, whether it be the city, zip. Once again, fill it out completely, do it correctly. So you could check mark this box and change the termination date. Maybe when the contract terminates, maybe you had it terminating like we did in the last contract on June 30th, 2023. Let's change that here. But maybe you want to change it and make it sooner now. So you could change that to, let's say you want to have it cancel on maybe the 1st now of 2023. So you just change that date here. Everyone signs this agreement. Now the termination date is now on the 1st of June of 2023. So that's how you do that as far as changing the termination date. The price and terms. You could use this to change the price and terms of the contract. A lot of times you can use this agreement if you're gonna like lower the list price. Let's say you had the listing at like 300,000 and now you want to lower the list price to 280. Most of the time, if you sign that contract and you list the seller's email address on that contract, you could just send an email to the seller requesting to lower the list price to 280, and the seller can just reply to your email stating, yes, in this case John Doe, you could lower the list price to 280,000, and you just save a record of that email, send it to your broker for a copy to keep in their records, and that could be good enough to suffice for as far as lowering the listing price. Just keeping a record of that email, because you already have a listing contract with the seller's email address on there, and now you have a communication back and forth between you and the seller and their approval for lowering the list price. So You could do that to keep it simple as far as lowering the list price, so that you don't have to pull out this modification and send it out for signature, have everyone sign just to lower the list price. You can do it in a simple email, but you can use this contract to do that as well, to change the list price. So that's how you do it here with this particular box. If you're going to change the commission, you could change it here. Maybe you had a listing contract at like it was 5% originally with the $3.99 transaction fee. Maybe things changed. Now you're changing it to 4% with a, $69 transaction fee. This is how you would use it to change it here. If you're going to be changing the commission amount, and have everyone sign this, the sellers and the listing associate, and then you can change the commission amount here. So that's what this box is used for if you need to change the commission. Compensation is owed to broker if property is transferred within X days amount after the termination date. I don't think I've ever used the modification form for clicking this, but if you want to change the protection period and termination date, you could check mark this, and like I told you in the listing agreement, it was 90 days. You could change this to 120 days, 60 days. So that's what you would check mark there. I don't think I've ever filled this part out here before. Usually I always stick with whatever I put in the contract, but if you want to change it, this is how you would change it right here. Fee to broker if deposit is retained by owner by seller will be X% of the deposit. This is like that paragraph I showed you. If a buyer defaults and you go after the escrow deposit, let's say the seller wins the escrow deposit, I always recommend 50-50 split, but if you want to change that or modify it, you could change it to a 60-40, so the broker can receive 60% or the broker can receive 40%, and 60% goes to the owner, the seller. So that's how you would change that here with this particular box if you're going to change that deposit amount. A leasing fee, that's for if you're doing rentals and so forth. Cancellation fee, if you're canceling the contract, you could check mark this box here. I have done this before, where if you're canceling the contract, the owner doesn't want to sell anymore, you could just check mark this box. The cancellation fee will be whatever it is. You could have that already in the contract to conditionally terminate, or you could put an extra thing here for whatever it is, $500, $1,000. Pretty much that. If you're going to conditionally terminate it as agreed upon in the agreement, you could check mark both of these, and the cancellation fee will be whatever you could, if you wrote $500 in the listing agreement, you could write $500 here, and that's where it'll be for as far as the cancellation fee to go to. So it'll be $500 for the cancellation fee, and you conditionally terminate the contract. Everyone signs this. The contract's now conditionally terminated, and the seller needs to compensate the brokerage the $500. You could also do the sorry about that. Unconditionally terminate. So let's read this real quick. I've done this before as well. Broker and owner, seller hereby agree to unconditionally terminate the agreement. Owner and seller agrees to reimburse broker for all direct expenses incurred in marketing the property. Broker and owner, seller mutually release each other from all obligations under the agreement and release each other from any and all claims and actions arising from or related to the agreement. So you could do an unconditional termination where you just completely relieve each other of all obligations under the agreement. I have done this before. Maybe there's a circumstance where you don't want any fees owed or whatever. You could even check mark the other box here. I've wrote that owner seller does not owe the broker any money for direct expenses, and $0 basically owes the broker $0, and you could word that differently and such, but maybe something happened and you just maybe you have a good relationship with the client and you just want to completely maybe you have multiple listings with this client, and this one specific listing is just they want to take it off the market and completely terminate this entire agreement pertaining to this particular listing, and you're not going to charge anything, you're just going to remove it off the market. You could do unconditional termination and check mark other, write that the seller doesn't owe the broker anything, and just completely terminate the contract and all obligations of the contract, and then you can still continue on with your other business with the other listings. So I have done that in this particular scenario if something did happen. So that's what you would check mark there for that. Other than that, once again, always fill this part out in the bottom here. Email, put the date there when it was returned to the seller, and then just have everyone sign and date. And whatever you're doing, whatever boxes you fill out, will take effect and modify the listing agreement that you have with the seller and owner. So that's how you would do for the modification to the listing agreement. Hopefully this video was helpful as far as talking about exclusive right of sale, what is exclusive right of sale, why I recommend always operating as a transaction broker and using right of sale, exclusive right of sale listing contracts, and hopefully this modification to listing agreement shed some insight on how to fill it out and what to do with it. So, the next video, next stream that we'll do, we'll talk about some other different things that I feel is important and what I'd like to discuss for that day. If you feel there's any topics you want to suggest, feel free to reach out, leave a comment, and let me know. Until then, if you tuned in, thanks for watching.